Yo, it's me, it's the SCOTT baby, and I'm here with my review for Backdraft 2, starring Joe Anderson, William Baldwin, Donald Sutherland, and is directed by Gonzalo Lopez Gallego. Alright, Backdraft is a good movie. Backdraft 2 is also a good movie. While Ron Howard didn't come back to direct, and the only person from the first film, well, two people from the first film reprised their roles, and that's William Baldwin as Brian McCaffrey and Donald Sutherland as Ronald Bartell, who is now old and in an asylum. Now, this takes place many years after the first one. This came out in 2019. I forgot to say that in my intro. And it follows Sean McCaffrey, the son of Kurt Russell's character, Stephen McCaffrey from the first film. And he's basically, his job, basically what Robert De Niro's job was in the first one. He investigates the fires. And he has to investigate this fire where 5 children were killed. And he figures out that it's arson, and for some reason, no one else wants it to be arson. They want it to be an accident. Even though he's found lots of proof that it's arson, nobody wants it to be arson for some reason. He and his new partner, Maggie, they are tasked with figuring out what is going on. Okay, so going into this. Now, when I bought this, initially I said, I'm not going to buy the second one. I think it might be a cash-in. I think it might be, one of those sequels you have. They try to, oh hey, there's no sequel to this movie. There's no sequel to Backdraft. Let's do a second one. And you think, oh, it's just gonna be a cash-in. It's not gonna be the same. But while watching this, I looked up this one, and seeing that they were kind of continuing with the son of Kurt Russell's character. Or actually, it was after I watched this, because I didn't want to spoil anything. But I was kind of interested. So when I finally found it at Walmart, I said, you know what? Let me buy it. Let me check it out. I don't know if you can tell, but on the back of his jacket there, it says Bull. That's actually Kurt Russell's jacket from the original film. His name was Bull. What I like about this is while Ron Howard's not involved, it still tries to continue. It's very respectful to this one, while also trying to be its own thing. William Baldwin, who was the star of the first film, it's not like a glorified cameo. He just has a smaller role. He pops up here and there. I think it's like at least a half hour, 45 minutes before he first pops up. Maybe a half hour before he first pops up in the film. And that's because he's not really the main character. It's Sean who's the main character. We find out things about Sean, like he set his stepfather's house on fire. And at first I was like, his mom got remarried. Well, they were on the brink of divorce before he died. It's possible she could have found someone else, And so we find out that Sean is sort of a pyromaniac, just like Bartell. Which is how he's so good at doing his job, in all actuality. But unlike Bartell, he's not psychotic. He's not trying to set fires deliberately. Except for one, but that actually helps him. 2, one doesn't help him, the stepfather's house, but the second one. Now, for the first part of this film, there's a concentration on trying to find the hunters, the people who own the house in which the kids died. And that leads to something that was iffy with me at first. And that's terrorism. the fires, the arsons that were being committed, it links back to terrorists. And at first I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But as the movie went on, and I saw how they concluded and how they dealt with it, I think it worked. These terrorists were setting these deliberate arson fires to distract from them trying to move this missile out of the country. They even at one point set up the loft that Sean lives in. He's sitting there with his girlfriend and the dog, which he doesn't say is his. He hasn't named it because he says, if you name the dog, then it's his. And the dog wakes him up and he goes to move. You hear a click and then the dog starts whining. And because dogs, they have the hearing. He can hear the frequency or whatever. And he tells his girlfriend, get out of the bed, get out of the bed. Get out of the bed. Do it slowly. Slow, because of any sudden movements and it could trigger it. And this is where I was a little bit conflicted myself. They kill off William Baldwin, or Brian. Now, I'm not a big fan of sequels killing off characters that were prominent in the first film. It's like, say, Halloween Resurrection killing off Laurie Strode right away. No. But this wasn't right away. He's in most of the film sporadically, not constantly. But he's a part of this film. He's not just quick cameo and dead. And the way he goes out is actually decent. He tells Sean that he's gonna, because the thing is stuck. If he moves out of the bed, the thing's gonna blow. The fire department's on the way, but there might be a second trigger that can activate it, so they can't wait for the fire department to come. So, Brian goes down underneath the room and breaks up underneath and triggers it, blowing out underneath. He also goes up a little bit, but it doesn't really, kill him or anything. But Brian dies. And I was sitting there and I'm going, normally I'd be pissed because I really liked his character in the first one. But the way they handled his character, the way they handled his death, I think it worked for the way the character was in both films. So it's a respectable death, like his brother's. One thing I was confused about, though, is, how I mentioned in the funeral, in the first one, they fold up the American flag thing and they give it to Kurt Russell's wife in the movie. In this one, they fold it up and they give it to a woman who has a son, next to her. Is it supposed to be his wife? Is that Jen from the first film? I don't know. She's not blonde. So it's very confusing. Or whatever color Jeff Jason Leigh's hair was. She has dark hair. Maybe he got married to someone else. Who knows? By the way, another thing that I rolled my eyes at. So, Sean meets his girlfriend. Her name is Jennifer. I'm like, really? That's the one pattern you're going to follow with these? Is you're going to get, besides having, the regular original character, and is you're going to say they both had a girlfriend named Jennifer. Okay. And there's this, Chinese guy, or Asian guy, I should say, and she said it's her father. I'm like, what? She's not Asian. And I looked at her, and I'm like, she looks mixed. She looks mixed race. She's American and Asian. She has sort of the eyes, the Asian eyes with the American, it's weird. But yeah, the terrorists. So, they put Donald Sutherland in this, and he's getting up there. And they have him in this mental institution. But when Sean first runs into him, he's in the hospital because he stocked up on sugar and ate it. He's diabetic. And that's where there's the first encounter. And they play, I think I like his character better in this one than the first one. He's funny. And they play him up like he's this genius who knows everything about everything. And eventually, he helps Sean find the bad guys. It's like a Hannibal Lecter type thing. You know what I mean? I think this movie came out the same year as Silence of the Lambs, 91, I think. But and the characters further in this one, but yeah, and so there's one thing I question though. So the movie, the climax, has Sean finding where the next fire is going to be and, stopping that from happening. He then finds the missile, he uses this thing to find the missile, and he sets the guys up. And his partner just happens to find him. Just as they pull a gun on him, she shoots the one guy, and then the other guy shoots her, and then Sean gets shot, and the guy's holding it up. And he goes to open the missile thing, and he's like, funny thing about Ronald, teaches you pretty interesting ways to start fire. And he opens the thing, and the fire goes off and incinerates the dude. And then he goes and he gets his partner. He calls her by her first name because this whole thing about how he doesn't remember her name. And he says her first name. She's like, you remembered my name. And then the next scene has him outside the fire station, I think, get into his truck and getting the dog in there. And they're talking, She's like, are you going to give it a name? He goes, if I give it a name, then it's mine. And then they drive off as the radio comes over about another fire. I think we missed a couple steps here, because this whole movie had been focusing on the police matter of it all. How they didn't want it to be arson because they wanted to write it off as something else. And they were going down on him hard because of what was going on, because the kids were killed and because this was happening and everything. And every piece of evidence they presented, they basically ignored because they didn't want it to be arson. And then the arsonist gets burned by a fire set by Sean. It's still iffy. I find that he would at least get probation or something. Or taken off. You know what I mean? Also, there's this mention of, and they come around to it, but they keep saying 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. And finally, when he's talking to Ronald asks him what that means and everything. And apparently there was a fire. He set it up so that the fire would extinguish itself, but his partner died in the process or something. Something like that. It was really kind of an explanation. Okay, partner died. Okay. I almost forgot about this part. So, like I mentioned in my review for the first film, is that Kurt Russell, or Steven, told Brian not to say anything about Axe. I can't remember his name. About Axe. Being an arsonist or anything. And there's a point where Sean goes to rescue someone in a burning building, and he falls, but he's in a dumpster and he's covered by these pipes or whatever. And Brian shows up and he asks for help, but Brian says, we're going to talk first. And Sean says he wants to know what happened. He blames Brian for his father's death. He wants to know what happened. He said, I wouldn't blame you. Tell me what happened. He goes, I can't do that. I promised Steven I wouldn't do that. I'm like, oh, that's great continuity. So then he ends up telling him because he wants to know, and they keep great continuity by saying that the guy was the arsonist, and basically, if you've seen the first film, you know what happens. So basically, what he tells him. The one thing I want to say, while Joe Anderson was very good in this role, I wonder why they didn't cast Kurt Russell's actual son in the lead role. Because here's the thing. His son, Wyatt Russell, is actually an actor. He was in Overlord and maybe a couple other things. Well, like I said, Joe Anderson's a good actor in this. But I think maybe casting Kurt Russell's actual son could have made more sense. I don't know if he could have done the acting better, but could have made more sense. And another thing I have to complain about is, remember my review for the first one, I said that Ron Howard, back in 91, they tried to do digital fire and it wasn't working. It looked terrible. Well, they do both in here. They do regular fire and they also do digital. And for the most part, the digital looks okay, except there are some parts where the digital is kind of questionable. It looks really fake. Some parts. Most parts is okay. You can't really tell. Maybe it's because it's probably real fire. I don't know. But there are parts where you can really tell that like when there's an explosion. Whenever there's an explosion, you can tell it's digital. That's mostly where you can tell. But other than that, it's great. It's not as good as the first one, but it is pretty good. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because I really enjoyed it. And you watch these back to back like I sort of did. I watched this, then I went to Walmart, and then I kind of relaxed for a while, then I watched this. So it's kind of back to back. And, you know, if you were to do like a double feature of these, I think it would work out great. They pay a lot of respect to the original in this one, and I really like it. So yeah, I highly recommend you to watch it. It's actually pretty good. 8 out of 10. So what are your thoughts on Backdraft 2? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.